So this is going to be a tutorial of me going through the steps of creating a perspective section and walking you through all of the steps. This is an unedited version, which means that it's going to be rather long, and we're probably going to hit a couple snags along the way. But I wanted to show you kind of step by step, just kind of walk you through how I would go about creating this using some of the tools and some of the commands in Rhino and Illustrator. Now, with that said, there's a good chance that you're going to run into your own issues when you're creating your own perspective section, and that's okay. That's kind of to be expected, just like I'm saying right now. There's a good chance we're going to run into problems in this video tutorial as well. So if you hit into, if you hit any issues, don't stress out. My biggest recommendation is just go to Google. In Google, just type in Adobe Illustrator, how to dot dot dot, right? Ask your questions, and then you're gonna have to you might have to watch a couple other YouTube tutorials or read a couple blogs, things like that to solve some of these issues. But don't get discouraged. This is part of the learning process. Okay. So really quickly, I just created this. Um, we'll call it a building. I essentially just took this one box, offset it, put it on top of one another, offset it, and then I did two rectangles, rotated them, and then did the Boolean difference command, and then just put some windows on the inside, and we're calling this a building, right? Now, hopefully, you'll have your own building. So this is just a video. This is just a tutorial. Sorry, this is just an example, something to work off of. Okay. If you want to have an idea of what it is that we're going to create, just fast forward all the way to the end of this once we're done, and you can see what it is that what we're hoping to get towards. Um, so I have my Rhino file. Okay. There's two important things that I think we need to that I need to mention before we get started. The first thing is we want to make sure that all of your glass is on a separate layer. Okay. It doesn't, I mean, if you already have it under Windows or something else, it's fine. We just need to be able to turn on and off the glass. Okay. Because what we're essentially going to do is we'll do a make 2D of the structure without the glass, and then we're going to do another one with the glass. And then when we go into Illustrator, we're going to be able to detail all of the stuff that's happening inside behind the glass, and then we'll go in and we'll overlay the Make 2D with the glass. So we're going to create this illusion that you could actually see through the glass. But in order to do that, we need to be able to do the Make 2D and to be able to turn on and off the glass, right? The other thing that I've done is very important that you have some sort of ground plane. Ideally, your ground plane is already developed, meaning you already know where the pavers are, you know what softscape, hardscape, you know where the trees are going to, and I mean, you have an idea of where like planter boxes, and the planter boxes are already modeled out, right? So this step is really what we're going to do is really kind of the last step. We're creating a presentation drawing. So when we do this, you really want to try to have as much as you can done in the drawing. Okay. The last thing is I just created these two 3 foot by 3 foot foundation blocks. They're just rectangles. Okay. I'm going to be cutting my section from here going this way. So that's why I'm putting them in here, kind of in this direction. We're not doing it all around. We're not really not even doing it correctly. It's really just the illusion, or just to kind of give this idea that you're thinking about foundations, right? And I'm putting them in the direction of where the section cut is going to be cutting through so that it shows up. If I was doing a cut this way, going this way, then I would have rotated the foundations so that they ran in this direction. Okay. Um, what else? I think there was one other thing. Hmm. I'm sure we'll figure it out as we go. as we go along. So we have, this is what we have. This is where we're starting from. Okay. Now, before we even get started with any of this, this perspective section is going to be a line drawing with color. Okay. And it's going to be just a single color, we'll call it like a monotone drawing. Um, so we have to pick that color. We're not using black. Okay. So we're going to have a variation of colors of one color. So we need to pick that color. Now I'm going to go with just a basic, just like a bright red, but I actually recommend that you go onto Adobe Colors, or sorry, color.adobe.com. And if you're not familiar with this website, this is a great website for you to explore colors. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. Color is not mine, is not a strength of mine. Choosing colors, picking colors, it's taken me a very long time to get to where I'm at now. And even then, I'm not that great at it. So you depend on websites like this website. There's other websites called Coolors, COOLORS.com. Very similar, but you should take a minute, just kind of explore. There's a lot of different ways of creating color and doing color libraries on here. But here you can go ahead and explore and find certain colors that you like, right? I told you I'm going to go with a bright red, but pick a color that you actually like, and that's going to serve as the base of the drawing. Again, if you want to have an idea of what exactly it is that I'm talking about, fast forward to the end of this video and you'll see what we're talking about. You'll see how everything's going to be one single color. So you have to choose that single color. Now, before you choose a single color, there's certain colors we cannot or should not use just because this is going to be on a print, and certain colors do not work well on a white background when they're printed. So neons and yellows, okay, do not print well, do not are very difficult to read on a white background. Okay. And when we print these for a presentation board or if it's going into a portfolio, things like that, yellow and neons are very difficult. So we try to stay away from those. The same goes for any really light colors that are very similar to white. So we want to make sure that, whichever color we do use, that it's going to be able to stand out against a white backdrop. I would refrain from going with the grays, just because the whole point of this is to show colors and grays aren't as exciting. Okay. But other than that, I think you could pretty much choose whichever color you like. If you can, tie it somehow to the project, right? I don't know. Figure out something. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it can be. One other thing is what works really well with this are pastels. So if I go up here and I just type pastel, these are also good colors because they're not going to be as vibrant. They're going to be much more subtle, but they're calm colors. And you'll notice that what we're doing is it's going to be very heavy. It's going to be very line heavy. So if it's something softer, it's a bit easier to read and understand. So that's where like the pastel colors come to play or are really good. So I would also probably recommend exploring some of the pastels, but again, it's up to you. Okay, just remember, compare it up against a white backdrop, and if it looks even remotely like it'll be difficult to read, don't choose that color, right? We want a high contrasting color. Okay, let's go. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's jump right into this. Again, please feel free to fast forward, slow down as we move through this. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a clipping plane. And I'm going to cut the building. So I'm going to go ahead and type in clipping plane. We'll do vertical. And I'm just going to go from one side to the other side, go straight up. And there we go. Okay. Now the section cut should always be taken from the most interesting part of the building, right? Like we're going to try to show the life of this project. And you don't want to go with the easiest part. You want to go with what's going to sell your project. And for me, the way I'm thinking about this is that I could put this kind of opening here will serve as this central focal point, and then I could possibly just put a tree right down the center here, right? And so like all of the units have access or, can look at this tree. By the way, I'm well aware that this building makes absolutely no sense structurally, programmatically. I have a couple walls in here randomly, but you know, the whole point was just to create something for this tutorial. So I'm going to say that my section is, somewhere around right here. Okay. I now remember that one thing that I forgot to, ooh, turn my clipping plane a bit off. The one thing I forgot to mention was that before we get started with this, make sure that your building is oriented in the correct direction, meaning that this truly is north, this is the east, this is south, and this is west, because we're going to be doing a sun shadow. You know, that's not even straight. I should do a new clipping plane. We're going to be doing a sun shadow, a sun study, and we're going to be pulling the shadows. And you do not want to show shadows in an area where there's not going to be any shadows. Okay. So the way we do it, get down here. Actually, let's do the clipping plane. The way we do it is we go based off of the red axes. I'm going to quickly just create this clipping plane here. Make sure that's good. There we go. Okay. So if you're not sure what is north, what's east, southwest, just orient yourself based on this axis. So if you're standing on the red line, looking towards the positive quadrant, which is right here, then you're looking north. Okay. So that means that this is north. And if that's north, then that means this is east, this is south, and this is west. So make sure that you orient your building correctly. Okay. All right, so now I have my clipping plane. I have the section where I need to go. I'm going to go ahead and move this clipping plane into the clip um, layer. Try to turn it on and turn it off. And then what I'm going to do is set my view for my section. And now typically a section has no perspective, right? A section should be flat. This is what my section, well, if I had the clipping plane, would look like. Um, So this is what a true section looks like. A perspective section has depth to it, right? So like we actually get to see stuff in the background. So a perspective section is not drawn to a scale, okay? Because perspective does not have a scale. So since we're not drawing it to a scale, it gives us the freedom to go ahead and just be a little bit more loose with it. It doesn't have to be exact. So what I want to do is make sure that I get the perimeter of the site in my window frame. That's the first thing. And then the height is, I want to go kind of straight on, but still be able to look inside just a little bit. So you can see here, I can see just a little bit on the top floor. If I wanted to, I could probably go a little bit now. I don't want to go too high. Kind of want to go right down the middle of the building, right? So this right here, I don't want to see the bottom. I still want to be able to see all of the spaces from the inside, okay? So I'm going to go right there, okay? So that's going to be my section. So I need to save this view. I'm going to come over here to my camera view or my name view. If you don't see this, you could right click over here, go to show panels, and go click on named views. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that camera and I'll hit the plus sign and I'm going to call this perspective section and I'll hit OK. This way, if I orient or I orbit, I can just come back, double click on this, and it takes me back to my perspective section. So we're going to be exporting 3 different files off of this. One is going to be the shadows, one is going to be the actual line work, and then the other one, as I mentioned, is going to be the glass. So for right now, what I want to do is turn the glass off, and you'll see that I do have a few interior walls inside here. Um, Now, it's very important that when we export this, we do not move our our drawing. The minute we slightly angle this in a different direction, then nothing's going to line up. When we later on down the line, when we start to overlay everything, things just aren't going to line up, right? So if you do accidentally move your camera, just come back to the camera view and double click, and it's going to just reset yourself. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over here, come down to the rendered view so that I can see my shadows. Now, if your shadows are not turned on, you could type in sun, and that's going to give you the sun options. You're going to want to click have the on checked, turned on, and then come down here and you could search a location. So you'll go ahead and type in Los Angeles. We'll click Los Angeles, and then we could go ahead and play with the suns, with the shadows, right? Now, again, I care less about the time of day or the month of the year. I care more about like the light qualities that I'm going to get from here, right? So I probably do, not probably, I do want to get some light down this center atrium. Now, the one thing to know though about the sun is that it's highest during the summer months and it's lower during the winter months. What that means for your shadows is that you're either going to have shadows that go straight down, right? Because during the summer the sun is higher, so the shadows being casted are going to be more angled, kind of inclined. But when the sun is lower, then your shadows are going to be longer and they're going to be casted farther. Okay, so that is one thing to think about is how do you want, when you're creating the shadows or when you're setting the shadows, that's how we could kind of play around with this. But I'm going to go ahead and pick something like that. Okay. Now we do want, notice that if I could lower the intensity, and the lower the intensity, the more kind of diffused my shadow lines are. What we're going to be doing in Illustrator, I actually want some light inside the room. So let's go. Yeah, there we go. Like I want to see this type of stuff. I'm kind of right there as well. Um, Maybe something like that. That's good. Um, so the intensity, you'll notice that these lines are more diffuse, and we want to try to get these as sharp as possible without losing the image as well. So if I go too much, I mean, that could kind of work, but then I end up having like these highlight moments right there. So I don't know. Let's leave it. Let's go something like that. Okay. The sharper the lines are, the easier it is going to be to manipulate in Illustrator. So once I have the sun and the shadows where I want them, I'm going to save my file because the next step might crash your computer. Hopefully it doesn't. It really shouldn't, but in case it does, well, you know what is going on right here? I wonder where that light is. Okay, sorry. Sorry. Um, yeah, so in case it did crash, at least you don't have to redo everything that you've done at this point. So what we're going to do now is save this as an image file. So I'm going to go up to File, Print, and right up here, the default is set to PDF. I'm going to change this to image file, and then I'm going to specify the height and the width. Now this is going to be, it's really important that we do this in the width or the height, in this case, it'll be the width of whatever the printed format is going to be. So for this, I know I'm going to print this in a 36-inch wide sheet of paper by I don't know how long. So what I care about is that the width is correct. So I'm going to change this to 36 inches. Okay, and I mean, I think we could leave that there, right? So there we go. Now it's 36 inches. However, you can see that it's being cut off right there. So what I'm going to do, let's leave this at display color, is right over here where it says window, we'll hit set. Okay, and this is where it's really easy to move the model. I'm going to left click and drag and just make sure that I get my image inside the box. So just right there. And then once I'm done, I'll hit enter. And now my image updated. Okay. And then that's it. We're going to go ahead and hit print. Make sure you can see, yeah. We'll hit print and then we will find the location and we're going to call this section shadows. I'm going to hit save. And I think it did it. I'm going to go check. Yes. Check the folder to make sure that it's there. So I have my section shadows as an image file. Oh no, I think I missed a step. Let's go to File, Print. Let's hit Print. Okay, the part that I missed, did it correctly, but the part that I missed is right down here where it says Save as Type. We're going to save it as a PNG. So if you click on this pull down, I think by default it's set to JPEG. You're going to make sure that it's saved as a PNG. This is a higher quality image file than a JPEG is. Okay, so make sure it's a PNG. You'll hit Save. I'm going to cancel that because I already did it. All right, so we're done with our shadows. We got 1 of 3 done. Let's go back to shaded view. And now what I'll do is let's turn on my layers. We're going to do a make 2D of what we have here. Make sure that you select down the shift key to select the ground plane. You want to make sure everything is selected. We're going to type in make 2D and we'll hit OK. And there's my make 2D. Let's go ahead and just move this off to the side. We're going to come back and edit that for a minute, but while we're at it, let's go back to camera. Let's turn our glass layer on. And we're going to do the same thing. Select everything. And we're going to do another make 2D. We'll hit OK. And we'll just go ahead and put this down here. All right. So here's the difference, right? This one doesn't have glass. This one does have glass. I'm going to, let's go to the top view. Okay. So this is going to serve as the base of our line work. So we're going to want to clean this up as much as possible. Specifically, like where we're going to poche, what are we cutting at, and then what's in the background. If there's any line work back here that's not touching, we want to make sure that things are touching. It's very important that we do not have any, and let me show you, any lines that are just kind of ending out of nowhere. So, and sometimes when you do the make 2D, you might get stuff like this. So this is the time to really kind of um, go through the file, go through the drawing, and try to catch as many imperfections as possible and just clean it all up. It might take you a little bit longer, but I guarantee you it's gonna save you time down the line because it's gonna suck if you have to come back to Rhino once you're in Illustrator. Okay, so if you have things like this, we'll type extend, extend that line. Okay. I'm just going to select the whole thing to type in trim because I know I want to trim this. Okay. The areas that I'm going to poche is I'm going to clean up. I don't need that line. I really don't need this line or this line or this line. Same thing over here. I can delete that, delete that, delete that. And anything else that seems odd. I think we're good here. I think I'm going to leave it. So now what I'll do is I'll select the whole thing and type in hatch. And I want to crochet this area, crochet this, and crochet this, right? We want to crochet what we're cutting through. I'll hit enter and then OK. So there's the beginning of my section. Now over here, I'm not doing anything with this one. This is the one for the glass, and I'm just going to end up using this down the line for reference, specifically so that I could draw in the glass, right? That's all we're using it for. So at some point, I'm going to turn it on, trace over it, and then I'll turn it off. So it doesn't matter if this is cleaned or not. I just need it there for reference. This is the one that I need cleaned up. So now that that's cleaned up, I will, why am I getting the wheel? Okay, I'm going to save the file, select the whole thing, and I'm going to export. So I'm going to go to File, Export Selected, and down at the bottom where it says Save as Type, I'm going to click inside here and go and find Adobe Illustrator because I'm going to export this as an Illustrator file. And I'm going to call this section line work. We'll hit save. We're just going to keep everything as is. We're going to change everything in Illustrator. I'll hit OK. And then I'll do the same thing over here. Select this, file, export selected. And this one we'll call section glass. And save and hit OK. And I think we are done with Rhino. Now with the whole thing, we're just getting started. So now what I'll do is I'm going to go into Illustrator. Let's go. I'll open up Illustrator. And I'm going to go click on Open. And let's open up our section line work. And while we're at it, let's open everything up. We'll go to Open Section Glass. And then we'll go Open Section Shadows. Okay. Yep. So what we're going to do, first of all, if your Illustrator does not look similar to this, we need to change the workspace. So go up to Windows. We're going to go into Workspace, and I'm working on Essentials Classic. Okay, so click on that, and your workspace should kind of change. The resolution of your screen, meaning if you're using a bigger screen or a smaller laptop, certain things might change, but typically it should look rather similar to this. Okay. Now on a PC, I can use the wheel on the mouse to go up and down. If I press the Control key, that's going to allow me to go left and right. And if I hit the Alt key and the wheel, that's going to allow me to zoom in and out. Okay. If you're on a Mac, I can't remember the exact commands, but it's going to be, I believe, the Control and the Command key. So press and hold down and move the wheel and see what does what, right? But they're going to be very similar. Um, okay, so here's my image. The next thing I'm going to do is create a new file. And this is going to be the actual working file. So let's go ahead and delete this. We'll call this perspective section. The width is 36 and the height, we can leave it at 24 inches. I'm not quite sure what the height's going to be on the presentation board. But if we give ourselves enough space on the top, then um, we can adapt or adjust that later on down the line. So let's say we have 36 by 24 landscape, and we'll hit create. Okay, the first thing I'm going to play with is the shadows. So I'm going to take this, come over here to shadows, select the image, and I'm going to left click and drag. Oh, I have my zoom settings. Click and drag and move my cursor over here until it changes the tab, and then I'll bring my cursor down, and then I'll let go of the mouse. Okay, so I clicked drag and I'm still holding the image down, and then I come over here and I let it go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and delete the second one. Then I'll go ahead and just kind of place this where I want it. Okay. And at this point, it's probably best that I just, look at the overall page and figure out, let's just go ahead and say, where is this section going to be drawn at this point? Like, do we want it higher up? That's going to give us a lot of ground. Do we want it lower? That's going to give us a lot of sky. It's better to have more sky than ground, but obviously we want to be able to have some on the bottom in case we want to crop a little from the bottom and a little from the top. So I think this is, somewhere 3/4 of the way down is good. Okay. So we have our image file. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is come over here to my layers. Okay. It's this one right here. If you don't see it, it's F7 on the keyboard. If I right click, no, Windows, layers, right there. So you would click there, and that's how you could pull this up. So I'm going to go to layers, and I'm just going to rename this. I'm going to double click right there and just call this shadows. Okay. Then I'll go ahead and select this, and I am going to do an image trace. I'll click on this pull down right here and select 3 colors. Okay. And this is going to take a minute. We'll hit OK. It's going to take a minute. What's Illustrator going to do is kind of assess the image. Yeah, my screen just went blank because it's processing. It's going to assess the image, and it's going to try to create line work based off of the image file, right? Um, and when it's done, it should come back and give me some type of line work or edited line work. So here we go. Okay. So this is what we have. The next thing, while it's still selected, don't click on anything. We're going to hit expand. Okay. Because what it did right now is just kind of analyzed everything. It's not until we hit expand that it's going to turn it into individual lines. Okay. Now you also see that it became kind of cartoon-like. It essentially broke everything down into 3 different colors, which is what we asked it to do. So what I'm going to do is create 3 different layers. 1, 2, 3. Hitting that plus sign down in the bottom. And I'll double click here, and I'm going to name this one dark gray, just call it DG. Double click, we'll call this one light gray. And then we'll double click here and we'll just call this white. Okay. And what I want to do is put all of these, put everything that's in the dark gray, put that on a layer, put everything that's in the light gray, put that in a layer, and so on. So what I'm going to do, we'll go ahead and click on this. Right now it's set up as a group. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to ungroup. And I'll click out here. I'll click anywhere on this white space, and I'm going to delete it because this is essentially the background. So now what I actually have is this. What I'm going to do is select one of the colors. So let's start with the dark gray. I'll go ahead and click on something that is in the dark gray. So this got selected. And I'm going to come up here where it says select. I'm going to come down to same and fill color. What I want to do is select everything that is the same exact fill color as that dark gray. So I'll click here. And now with everything selected, okay, You see this blue square? I'm going to click and drag and move it into the layer that I want it to. So this is the dark gray, so I'm going to leave it right here. Now you'll notice that the layer itself changed as well. I'm going to hit this eyeball right here, click on this, because that's going to hide it. Okay? So whenever we want to turn it on and off, we're just going to click right there. Now I'm not going to do the light gray first because then I'm not going to be able to find the white. So let's do the same thing. Select anything that's white. We'll go up to select, same, and fill color. And we're going to come over here, click, drag, and move it up to the white layer, and then turn it off. And now we're just left with the gray. I'll select something that's the light gray, select, same, fill color, and then click and drag to light gray, and then turn that off. So with everything turned off, I shouldn't have anything, right? Because everything is should be in its own layer. Now we could go ahead and turn everything back on. Now, technically, these are all colors that go into my shadow layer. So what I'm going to do is just click and drag and put that into my shadows layer. Click and drag shadows layer, click and drag shadows layer. Okay. Now I do have one issue, and I'm not sure how I'm going to fix just yet. So I'm going to think about it while I keep working. So now with everything selected, sorry, now with everything, all the shadows on their own individual layer, what I'm going to do is turn off the white layer because the white is technically the poche. So now we have the light gray and the dark gray, which are our actual shadows. And I'm going to click on the keyboard Control A at the same time, or it might be Command A on a Mac. Um, Control A, and that's going to select everything. Then I'm going to come down over here, and this is where we select color. We could select it down here. We could also select it up here. If you're not familiar, but at this point, hopefully you are, we have two options, two kind of squares. It's the fill and the stroke. So the fill is the color that happens inside of the stroke. So the stroke is essentially lines. I don't know why they don't call it line work, but they don't. They just call it stroke. So these are all strokes. And then the fill exists on the inside of the strokes, right? So this solid box here is the fill color, the one with a square at the center, that's the stroke color. So what I'm doing now with everything selected is I'll come over here and I want to change the fill color, which is this rectangle here. I'll double click to the color that I've selected from Adobe Colors, right? I know I've selected the red one and I know the hex number, okay? Sorry, I should go over that really quickly. I forgot to go over that. Let's go back to Adobe Colors. Let's say here's the color that I want. Okay, when I click on it, I get this number, right? CC3333. Let's write that down. Actually, you know what? That's the color I'm going to use from now on. So I'm going to write this. It's a 6-digit number. This is CC3333. That's pretty easy to remember. Okay. So now let's go back. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to find the color you want and write that 6-digit down. Let's go back over here. And in my color picker, right down here, we have the hashtag. This is where we enter the 6-digit code. So it was CC 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3 threes. Okay, I can hit the tab key, and there we go. I'll hit OK. Okay, now everything looks like this crazy solid. If I do Control Alt, select everything. If I come up here, I could change the opacity, right? And so if I click on this arrow, then I could bring this down. And it's now, let's set it to 25. Highlight there and type in 25. Now you can begin to see that these are shadows. Okay. But this is just that one image file, right, with the shadows. let's actually bring in the line work. So what I'm going to do at this point is lock everything because I'm going to bring in another drawing and I don't want the two getting kind of mixed up with one another. So I'm going to come over here and in this area at the top where it says shadows, if I click in this area, that's going to select the lock pad, right? Now I could lock, because these are subcategories or sublayers, I could lock each one individually. Or since they're all under subcategories of the shadows, if I turn off the shadow, sorry, if I lock the shadows layer, then they're all going to be locked. I could also collapse this. Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer. I'm going to change this to my line work. So let's call this line work. And then let's go to my line work over here. And this is what came in. I'm going to select the whole thing and then do the same thing. Click, drag, move my cursor to my drawing, and then bring it in. And the first thing you'll notice is that they are not the same size. Okay. We know that this image is the correct size because this is what we printed off of, right? This was just a quick export. There was no scale. We didn't specify a scale. So what I'm going to do is select the whole thing and then just kind of move it to one corner of the building. And then I'm going to click and drag on the corner grips and then hold down the shift key on the keyboard. And that's going to allow me to scale it proportionately. If I do not hold down the shift key on the keyboard, then it's going to start to stretch it in like a really weird way. And then once we do that, we can't get it back, right? So make sure that you hold down the shift key and you want to get it big. And this is going to take some time. So it's going to take a couple tries. So I'm going to just get it big. And then I'm going to come over here and move it back into place. I'm going to zoom in. So holding down the Alt key on the keyboard. Okay. And kind of get this in place. And I'm going to do the same thing. Hold down the Shift key. Go a little bit bigger. Come down and then move this kind of in place. These also will begin to start to snap. But these lines are really thick. Like the thickness of my lines here are like massive. So I really can't see where I'm at. So what I'm going to do with everything selected right now is right up here where it says stroke on this pull down, I'm going to bring this down. Let's go to 0.5. That's going to thin out my lines quite a bit. There we go. That's so much better. Now let's go ahead and do a cross window. I think we're right on it actually. Oh, that ended up perfectly. So I'm just using the image underneath the shadows as the reference point. Okay. Now our shadows are not going to line up perfectly because when we did the image trace, it disrupted the image a little bit. So as long as we're pretty close, which I'd say we are. I mean, if I take this and I move it, oh well, no. I mean, our lines are pretty much right on, right? So you want to go ahead and scale as much as, um, just kind of keep scaling it over and over again until you have it correct. We're going to do this one more time. We have this in place. We're going to create another one. And we're going to call this one line work glass. And I'm going to lock the line work layer. By the way, whichever layer we have selected, that's the layer that we are working on. Okay. Notice that when I click over here on a layer that is locked, if I try to create something, I get the little symbol that says I can't do anything because I'm on a layer that's locked. So, okay. So let's go to the glass. We're going to do the same thing. Select the whole thing, click, drag, and drop, and then start on one corner and hold down the Shift key. Okay. And then click and drag. And then come back over here. I'm going to zoom in because I think I'm close. So let's get this correctly. We have to do the same thing. The lines on these are really Let's do another cross window. Because because I have the layers locked, I can select this and nothing's going to be selected. That's on the lock layer. We're going to change this to 0.5. It's really hard to see with that poche, so maybe I start to use a different. Let's come over here. Let's use this. This is going to be much better. There we go. So here you could see I'm still not there. So let's hold down the shift key and they go around right there. I'm essentially lining up the horizontals right there. That usually tells me if I have the top line aligned, then the bottom horizontal line gets me really close. So let's click and drag. And I think we're pretty spot on. We're a little bit bigger over here on this side. So let's go ahead and bring this in just a hair. Let's line that up right there. Let's see what that does. Yep, we're good. Again, I'm holding down the Alt key and using the mouse to zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so this is the glass layer. And you can see that we now have the lines for the glass. But I'm going to go ahead and just turn that off because we don't need it right now. And I'm going to bring that down underneath the shadows. Okay. The way everything is organized in Illustrator is based on the layers, and the whatever is on the top are the objects that are arranged to the front or closer to you in the drawing, right? As layers are going back and back or lower and lower and lower, what the objects that are on those layers are farther back and back. Okay. Let's go ahead and unlock the line work. What I actually like to do is make a copy of the line work because this is really important. This is what's going to give us all of our lines. So if we make a mistake, or if we change anything or alter anything in the drawing or in this process, um, at least we have a copy of it. So the way I'm going to create a copy is hold down the Alt key on the keyboard. I'm pressing down and then left clicking and dragging it down, and you'll see that I get that hand with the plus symbol. So I'm going to bring it down to the bottom and then let go. And here's line work copy. And I'm also going to turn that off because I don't want it on. It's just here as backup. Okay. So we're almost to a point where we could start playing around a bit. The next thing I'm going to do is isolate the pochés, right? Right now, the poché lines are, the poché walls are on the same layer as my line work, and I want to put those on a separate layer in case I need to bring those up. So let's go ahead and create a new layer, double click there, and I'm just going to call it poché. And I'm going to select this, hold down the shift key, select that, and select that. And, oh, I forgot to poché this area in here. Huh. Okay. Well, in that case, we're going to have to do that here in Illustrator. So I'll hold down the shift key. Let's finish what I was doing. I'm going to select this and click and drag and put that up in the poché. So when I turn it off, they're gone, right? Now what I'm going to do, because now I have to create the poché here, I'm going to lock my line work. And then I'm on the poché layer because it's selected. I'm going to use the pen tool right over here. Oh, and I'll zoom in and I'm just going to trace over. I'm just going to click once. And I'm using, by the way, I'm holding down the control key and the wheel, and that's how I'm panning to the left and to the right. And I'm going to click on this point, click on this point, and you'll start to see, once you do 3 clicks, you'll start to get a fill color because I have a color selected here. Now, if you have a different color or something's off here, or it's not the black, that's fine. We'll be able to change that afterwards. Okay. But I'm going to come back, click on this point right there. Now, it looks closed, but it's not fully closed. You see my cursor, how I get that little circle um, next to the pen icon. That circle lets me know that I'm now closed. I now have a closed loop, which is what I need. So I'll go ahead and click, and that's going to finalize my shape. Oh, let's delete that. And so that's that right there. So let's do the same thing over here. Click on the pen tool, come over here, and I'll just click right there. Click, zoom out, move, hold down the control and the wheel, then zoom in, holding down the Alt key, and I'm going to click, click, zoom out, go over here, zoom in, and close it off because I have that circle. Click. I'll click on the selection tool, which is this one right here. This is kind of like my safe button. That's going to allow me to like click on things. Okay, that's much better. So now I have these pochets as well. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll select the whole thing, and I'm going to come in here and change the fill color to my selected color, CC 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and there we have that, right? Now, if you have a black line, if for whatever reason your shape has black line work, notice the difference here. Let me just exaggerate it. The difference between this one that doesn't and this one that does, that's because this one has the stroke, right, selected. So the way we turn that off is we'll hit this little none symbol, but it gives the none is applied to whichever one of the symbols is above the other. So, and if we did it right now, it's going to give us none on the fill. So when I click on the stroke, that brings that above the fill, and then I could click on the none, and that's going to turn it off. Okay. All right. So now the next, hmm. So my issue that I'm having right now that I'm worried about is the shadow that I'm getting underneath my ground, right? I got those shadows because this is a surface. However, I'm gonna put dirt down inside here, and I don't want to show shadows underneath because there wouldn't be any. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a shape. The same thing that we did with this poche. I'm essentially going to create another shape and just leave it all white. And hopefully that's going to give me what I need. So let's go into the correct layer. We're going to turn on poche. This is going to be on my shadows layer. Oh, and let's expand the shadows. So now I have the white. I'm going to create a new layer and we'll call this whiteout. Double click, we'll call it, I might have multiple whiteouts, so let's just call it DWO whiteout underground. And I'm going to put this in my shadows layer. All right, so now that I'm here, let's go ahead and use the pen tool. And this don't want a stroke, and the fill, I'm going to want it to be white. The fastest way to get to white, the most accurate way, is right over here. I just hit 0, tab key, 0, tab key, 0, tab key, 0, tab key. And that's going to give me a true white color. So I'll hit OK. And then I'm just going to follow. I mean, I have this little piece there. I technically could just kind of go around. You know what? Let's go backwards. Let's go back to the selection tool and delete this. So I went to the selection tool so I could click on it and delete it. I'm going to start over. We'll do the pen. Instead of going to the left, we'll go to the right. Look here, here. over here, click, come down. I'm just gonna go all around. Holding down the control key. Just gonna click on all of these little pieces and all these corners there. And you'll see that it's generating like the white. I don't think I went to the end there. Let's go there, click. Holding down the Alt key. I'm basically have my pinky on the control and my index finger on the Alt key. That's how I'm able to kind of maneuver around. I could zoom out, click. Come on, let's go all the way over here. Click. And this one is where I'll probably go up. Okay, and this point, I don't really care because now I'm just creating that fill. Just gonna go all the way around. And then end it. Make sure I hit that circle. If you don't hit that circle, you're gonna run into problems. So we have to close it off. Make sure you get that circle and click. Come back to the selection tool, and there we have it. So it's there, but it's white. So it's hiding the shadows underneath. Okay, so now that we have that, now we're gonna go ahead and start adding to, we're gonna start kind of making this prettier. We're gonna start working with swatches, okay? Swatches can be found, I can move my zoom controls, right over here, right? This is the swatches. What I'm going to do is come to layers. I'm going to create a background swatch, like a background pattern. Okay? That's going to kind of serve as the sky, or just like a texture in the background, so I could see what's ground and what's beyond. So I'm going to expand this. We could put the shadows light locked. We're going to call this background. You'll notice that I'm actually spending time to like name everything. That's just because we're gonna be having a lot of layers. So it's nice to know what's what. Okay. So select the background layer. I'm going to create a rectangle. Do that. Let's create a rectangle. Right now it's set to a white, so it's gonna turn everything white, which is not something I'm gonna like, but let's just do it. So I click, drag, and then come to the end there and then let go. Right. Now, I mentioned it turned everything white because the fill is white, right? But because it's underneath the poche and line work layer, I'm still getting some of this stuff. But because it's above the shadows layer, it's hiding the shadows, right? So if we move this up, then it's above the line work, and now all we see is the poche. But I'm going to put this back here. Actually, let's put this at the end, underneath the shadows. Now it's still selected because we still have the grips on. I'm going to come over here to the swatches, and I'm going to come down to my library swatches, okay? And I'm going to come down. These are all essentially repetitive patterns, okay? Think of swatches as wallpaper, right? So we're going to put a wallpaper on this thing. And you use these wallpapers for all sorts of things. But we're going to come down to patterns, basic graphic, okay? And you could technically play around with any of these. You could do dots as a background, you could do lines as a background, you could do textures as a background. We're just trying to give it a little kind of texture. Um, so feel free to use whichever one you want. I'm going to go with lines. And I'm going to go ahead and click on this one right here. Right? And so that's what we get. If you want it, the lines closer. So you see like, thicker it is, the darker the background is. I'm going to stick with the white with the thin lines in the back because I'm not trying to get a whole lot of contrast. I'm just trying to get some kind of texture back there. So now I have this as a backdrop. We have a problem though. My lines, well, we have a couple problems. First thing is that my lines are black. So we need to edit that. The way we do that is we come into the swatches. Okay. If you click, and right now it's already selected because we just used it, but if you click on a swatch or the shape of a swatch, it'll be highlighted in this little swatch box. I have no idea how and why these things are so small. They just are, but you can see that this one is slightly selected. So I'll double click here, and that's going to take me to the swatch menu settings. And what all I'm going to do is hit Control A on the keyboard, and that's going to select everything. Now let me take a minute. The way swatches are created is pretty simple and straightforward. You essentially create a pattern and then you isolate that pattern using a shape. It's typically done in a rectangle, but I've seen it done in circles. I've seen it done in trapezoids, all weird shapes, depending on what it is that you are drawing. And then whatever is inside this border is what gets repeated as the pattern, right? So if we want to make changes to the pattern, then we have to make changes to whatever is inside this blue box. So I could select each one individually, or I could just hit Control A and it's going to select this here, right? What I'm seeing out here is essentially just the repetitiveness, the repetition, the patterning, or the stitching of whatever is inside here. So with these lines selected, I could come over here, double click on my lines or on the stroke and change this to my set color. And we'll hit OK. And once we're done, we'll hit done. You could save a copy if you wanted to, but I'm fine just leaving it like that. So now we have red lines. I'm a little worried about this white, but we'll fix this later because we're going to add another hatch on top of this anyway. So maybe we could just overwrite all that. So we have this as a backdrop. Now the problem is that it's running above our, well, it's not running above, but like we see it through our drawing, right? And that's because our drawing does not have any colors to it. Let's turn off the backdrop because, right, this, if I click on, let's go to my line work. There is no fill on the inside here. It is just lines. So when I turn on the backdrop or the background, I'm seeing right through this because it's just a set of lines. Right? Illustrator has no idea that this even came from a 3D model. It has no idea that this is a surface or it's intended to be a surface. It's just a bunch of lines. And so that's what we're seeing right through it. So what we need to do is we call it live paint. We need to paint inside these closed rectangles or these closed shapes. Notice how I'm saying closed. That's why it's important that when we draw our lines or when we're in Rhino, that we don't have that like line that was just stuck or that didn't finish, because then that's not a closed line. And then when we paint, it's going to paint around that line, right? It's going to select the lines that were actually closed. So we have an option to paint within a closed set of lines. Now, the way we're going to do that is I turn off. You'll notice that I like to turn a lot of layers on and off so that I can just focus on what it is that I have in front of me. I'm going to select all of this, go to my line work, Control A. I could do Control A because everything else is turned off. Okay, select everything. And the way we convert this into paintable rectangles is we go, or paintable shapes, we go up to Object. We first select everything, then go up to Object, and then scroll all the way down to Live Paint, and then Make. Okay? And you'll notice that the little grips in the corners now have little stars on the inside. That tells me that I can go ahead and start painting. Now, to paint, I'm going to go over here to this icon here. You'll notice that to the right it says K. If I click on this little triangle at the bottom, there are other options. So I think by default, it's actually this is the symbol. So you're gonna have to click, hold, and hit Live Paint. Or what's a lot easier, just hit the letter K on the keyboard and it'll automatically pop up the Live Paint button. Okay. Now, what we want to do is come inside here and we want to paint because this is going to be a fill. Our When I say paint, we're essentially using the fill color. So the paint is going to be white. So I'm going to change this to 0, 0, 0, 0. We'll hit OK. And you'll notice that as I move my cursor, it's now selecting all of the closed sections. So if I go inside here and I click, okay, you can't tell anything because everything's white. So why don't we bring the backdrop now? And now you see that where I clicked, it's white. So what I want to do is essentially paint inside all of my walls so that I do not see any of the background lines. Now, if you had an area that was actually seen through the building that has a back that's open to the back. So for example, you see how I have it here? This implies that the wall ends here and now this is a complete kind of balcony to the outside, right? So how you paint it will kind of portray what it is that you're modeling or what your intentions are. So I'm gonna go and close this off. Click, click. There we go. And this area. Notice that I didn't zoom in. I could, and when I do, I notice I should. Let's click inside here, but I have to be very careful because I could act when you're so zoomed in, you could actually forget what's what, right? And I could come and click over here, or maybe I can't. Don't forget that the background layer, this swatch, is in a rectangle and is in a shape as well. So we could also sometimes accidentally click on the outside and turn the background white. Right now it didn't, which is great. Let's do this one and this one. Got to get in here on these, right inside there. Almost done. And right inside there. I think we got it all. If not, we could always come back and do the same thing. So now I'll go ahead and now this is what we have. If I turn on the pochets and if I turn my shadows on, why do I not see my shadows? Oh, why do I not see my shadow? That's a great question. I don't see my shadows because my shadows layer is below my line work layer. And my line work is where I just finished painting everything. So now with everything painted, the shadows are behind the paint. So I need to come, click and drag and move this up. And there we have our shadows. Now this is starting to look pretty cool. It's going to get better. All right. Now the next step is going to be to, what's our next step? Begin to add floor swatches. This is actually the fun part. I'm going to go ahead and open one of the files that was provided to you. If I could find it. The swatches Illustrator file. So let's go ahead and open that up. So, you know what? I could go ahead and close these off now. I'm done with these. Oh, you know what I need to do is save. Save, save, save. So let's go ahead and just file, save. Perspective section, save. Okay. All right. So we talked about swatches already, right? It's these backgrounds. The other thing too, by the way, is I can take this and we'll play around with this later, but we could like change the opacity so it's not as, apparent, and it just gives us a little texture in the back. Something that's good. So So we talked about swatches as patterns. Well, we could do the same thing and apply the different patterns to the ground floor or to the different floors. So what I'm going to do is come over here to swatches and let's pick our ground floor on the inside. These are all different swatches that we could use. Okay. Um, I like that one, but that's a little too complicated, maybe. Let's go with maybe a concrete. You know what? It's an indoor space that's open to the outside. Let's go with this one here. Actually, you know what? Let's go with the complicated one. It's the one I actually want. Oh, I'm worried about this one. I'm worried because we're gonna have to change everything into red, and these are all different tones of red. These will end up being all different tones of red. So this might actually not be, this is going to be very challenging to manipulate. So let's stick with, I'm not sticking with any of these color ones because we'd have to manipulate the colors. Let's go with, I know I'm taking too long. Let's, okay, let's just stick with this. No, let's go with the concrete. We're gonna go ahead and stick to, this is boring though. He didn't realize that it was gonna take this long because I couldn't find an option for a floor. Let's go with this one. Yeah, all right. Let's go with this. So what I'm going to do, clearly I'm not decided, I'm undecided. What I'm going to do is let's go and take this. We're going to click and drag and bring it in. Okay. Oh, I need to create a layer. So let's create a layer. Actually, before we're going to lose this, so let's just move it off to the side somewhere so we can grab it afterwards. So we're going to create a new layer. We're going to call this watches. And we're going to want to put the swatch layers above our line work because we want to be able to see it. So now I'll select this and I'm going to click and drag and put this in my swatch layer. Okay. So what I like to do is start off by just throwing the swatch inside and seeing what it does. So I'll go ahead and select the swatch. I bring it next to it, click on it, then come back to the live paint, hit the letter K, and I'm just going to click on the inside. And what do I have? What is this? Oh, I see what's going on. Same thing that's going on over here. There is no white background. This is just line work. So there is no fill, it's just the stroke. And because there is no stroke, because there is no fill, I'm seeing right through it to the background layer. That's why I'm getting these red lines. So that means that I need to change not only the color of the line, but I'm going to have to add a white fill so that it gives me a white background. So we know how to edit now swatches. I'll go ahead and select this. Let's go to the swatch library up here. And it's the one that is highlighted. So I'll double click on it. Okay. And what I'm going to do is let's control A. So we select everything. Come down here. Ooh. So I think these are lines, and I think these. Well, what happened? Let's double click this again. All right, well, let's just see what happens. Let's go ahead and change the stroke. I'm going to double click on the stroke. Let's go CC 333. Okay, what happened? Okay. So not bad. The lines changed. We select these. Let's change the stroke. Maybe it's just because it's so thick. A little bit better. Kind of don't like it as much now, though. All right, so we have this. We changed the lines, but now we have to change the white background. We have to put that white fill, right? Or else we're going to see right through it. So let's come inside here. What is this? What happens if we just change this to white? 0, 0, 0, 0. Hit OK. Okay. That may have worked. We don't know. So let's try it out. We'll hit done. That didn't work. Well, we have the color, but that didn't work because I can still see right through it. So let's go back and we'll double click on it. And what I'm going to do is create a rectangle. And this one, I'm going to just turn this into white. I do not want a stroke, so I'm going to turn the stroke off. And then I'll go ahead and go from one corner all the way to the other corner, click and drag right there. And it turned it white, right? So just so that this is actually a good point. So that you can see what I mean with, that it's repeating whatever's in the red and the blue. This illustrator is repeating what we see over here is whatever is being shown inside here. Okay. So I do want to go all the way to the other side, but this is the rectangle that I just created is above all of the other lines. So I need to go to the layers, expand right here. And let's click and drag and place it right down there. See what happens. Perfect. Oh, I think we got lucky there. Let's hit done. We essentially need to put that rectangle. There we go. We had to put that white all the way below all of the line work. Okay. So we're getting there. It's better. But however, there's a couple things. The scale is massive, right? We need to shrink this. Now, if I shrink this down, it's sometimes some of these get smaller. This one actually did. Sometimes they don't, right? And maybe we'll bring some that don't. If for whatever reason yours, the one you chose, doesn't get smaller, this one did actually, all you have to do is click on it. We'll go to Object Transform and then Scale. And when you scale, you need to make sure that this button right here where it says Transform Patterns is selected, okay? Scale, strokes, and effects, you could have that selected as well, but this is the one that's important. What I've learned with these swatches is that the first time you import or you bring a swatch in, you have to do this. You're gonna have to go in and select transform patterns and then hit OK, change the scale however you see fit. I'm not gonna bring it that small. Let's go to 50. Preview, make sure preview is selected. Maybe 75. Let's see what that looks like. We'll have to test that out. We'll hit OK. But after you do this the first time, after you go up to Object, Transform, Scale, and you hit OK, you do what you need to do. Every swatch afterwards, all we need to do is actually select it and then double click, and that's going to isolate the swatch. Okay, you'll notice everything else is kind of ghosted. And then this allows us to edit, holding down the Shift key so that we edit proportionately. And that's going to change the swatch. The scale of the swatch as needed, right? We could also hold down the Alt key and then click on one of the corner points, and that's going to begin to change the perspective of it, right? And so this is going to kind of flatten it out. So what I'm trying to do now is to match sort of the angle of the plane. Let's undo this. so that you could have a better understanding of the issue. So it's scaled. Let's go a little bit smaller. We'll double click to get outside of that, and then I'll select the swatch, hit the letter K, and then bring it inside there, right? Let's do, this is kind of a bad place to talk about this. Let's go ahead and move this up here. We'll go ahead and add this material to the outside, and then we'll come back and we'll change it later. Um, but let's go ahead and add it right there. You see, the problem with this is not only, do we have to get the scale, but the perspective, the angle of this watch, we're looking at it straight on. This surface is at an angle, right? It's kind of inclined back. So what we need to do is the same thing to our swatch. So that's why we need to hold down the Alt key on the keyboard and then bring it and kind of try to get that same angle without losing the scale. Now, it doesn't have to be exact. There we go. It doesn't have to be exact, but even just a little bit actually goes a long way. That sort of looks better, except that we could see the tiling now. So now what we would have to do is scale this up. And you know what? This is going inside here, so maybe it's not as noticeable. There we go. That seems to be better. So there we have that. Again, this outside one, I'm going to go back and put like a brick or something on the outside. This was just to show you why we alter the perspective. So once I'm done with these, I move them off to the side in case we need them again. All right. Now let's go ahead and do this second floor. So let's go to swatches. The second floor, maybe I want a wood. Let's go with this chevron wood. Go ahead and click, drag, and bring it in. You know what? I don't want that background anymore for right now. So let's do the same thing and see what it, actually I need the background because I need to see if there's a white background to this or not. But I'll select this, hit the paint, hit the letter K, and we're gonna go ahead and paint right inside there. Let's turn the background on. And this also does not have a white background, so we're gonna have to change that as well. So let's come over here, select this, and go to our swatches. And it's this one right here. So if I double click, whoa, this one's different. Okay, so remember, it's whatever is inside the blue lines is our swatch. So let me go ahead and click here. Hmm. All right, let's go ahead and change the lines here to our color. And let's also just give it a fill. Maybe we can get lucky and this. Oh, I think that's gonna work. We'll hit OK. What looks off? Oh, this color. So these are two different ones. Okay. So let's select this. Yeah. Let's change the lines here. CC. We'll hit OK. And we'll do the same thing. Give it a fill of white. Hit OK. Let's cross our fingers. Done. Let's bring the background layer. Hey, that worked. Okay. Perfect. So now all we have to do is change the scale. So if let's see, if we bring this down, we make this smaller. And now let's go ahead and apply it. So that's smaller, but now let's select this, hold down the Alt key on the keyboard, and let's try to get this Something like that. Probably around that angle. There we go. Cool. Now, because these lines, you see, hmm, well, you see these lines, this is the issue with the perspective. These vertical lines are going to show and tell us that this is an off perspective because it's a 2 point perspective. So like these lines are going into the vanishing point. So my horizontal lines are actually not straight, right? Like this line is at a different angle than this line is. And because of that, whenever we have these vertical lines, at some point, these are going to stay vertical, but then it's going to look really weird in the space because this, you see, on this side of the room, this vertical line is aligned to this wall. And our mind thinks that this wall is parallel to this wall, which it is. But if that's the case, then why is it that this line, when we hit this side, is completely off, right? And that's an issue with the perspective. There's really not much we can do about that. Something we can try is rotating this so that these vertical lines are now running horizontally, and that's a bit easier to read. Or we just leave it, right? We're going to have so much information on here and zoomed out, you really don't notice it, right? So I'm actually going to use that same one and, oops, not F. Sorry. Hit the letter K, and I'm going to place that inside there. And you know what? Why don't we, just to save time, we'll select this one and add this there and add this to the outside. Okay. I'm not a big fan of this one at this point, but it is what it is. Okay. Now this outside one. This one we can go ahead and do one of the bricks. Let's choose, we could do this one. Let's do this one, like a paver or a cobblestone. No, let's do a paver. So let's go ahead and click, drag, and drop over here. Yeah, see, I already know that we have no background in there. So let's actually just jump right into this. Let's go into the swatches, double click. We'll select everything. Maybe we'll get lucky again. Let's change the swatch color to CC3333. I should mention some of these do not give you a color. And at this point, hopefully you haven't gotten one at this point. Um, some of these, when we select them, select everything, change the color, and I choose like a red, I'll hit OK, it'll still come out gray. So some of these are set up as monochrome, which means that even if you apply a color through the fill and through the fill and the stroke, it'll still come out black or gray. If that's the case, all you have to do is change the fact that it's a monochrome. And the way we do that is we come over here where it says color or color guide and just pick any one of these colors. It doesn't even matter which color. I could choose this one, right? But choosing and applying a color to it, you've now changed kind of like the profile of that object. And now you could go in and double click and apply the color that you want. Okay. Again, that's only if you have that issue where you're trying to change the color, but the color it just keeps coming back. It just comes back as a like a gray. That's what you do. All right, let's go ahead and see if we can turn this into a white. Fill, give the fill a white. I think that's gonna work. We'll hit OK. Let's hit done. Perfect. Not really. Well, no, because this is going to imply that we could see right through it. So let's go back. So close. But all we have to do is create a rectangle, give that rectangle a white fill, turn off the stroke because we do not want a stroke. We don't want a rectangle line showing up everywhere. And then I'm going to click and drag right there. And that's weird. Oh, that's because these pieces stood outside. So let's just bring this out over there. Click and there. So essentially when you do this, you don't want to see anything. Why am I seeing this? I don't know. Let's see what we get. We'll select this and let's go to the layers. Let's expand this. So here it's not as a group, so I have to click and drag. And I bring, so the way we scroll down is you just kind of, I'm clicking, dragging, and I move my cursor slowly, and then it'll start to, there we go, come down to the bottom. Now it's not going to let you pick the last one. So I'm just going to move this to the second last one. And then I'll grab the last one and I'll click and I'll drag and I'll put it above my white space. Okay, something's a bit weird. And it has to do with this. Let's go back. I think we have to follow actually. There we go. That's still weird. What if we, there we go. I guess that's what we have to do. Okay. So again, you have to look at the swatch and the pattern to see what's going on and how it's working. Speaking of which, is that correct? I feel like I'm missing something here. That might be in the bottom. I'm just guessing here, by the way. Nope, that's not right. Why? Notice I'm getting something cut off there. Well, this something is at the bottom, right? I don't know. There we go. So I guess I had to move it up. Okay, let's hit done. You know what? I'm still seeing some in there. Why am I still seeing something in there? Ugh. This is why this is time consuming. But let's go ahead and select this. Where is it? I think it's that one. All right, let's, how do we even know though? Let's just move that over. I'm taking a guess there. Let's hit done. There we go. That worked. Okay. So let's select this. The letter K. That's way too big. So let's go ahead and bring this a lot smaller. And then I'm going to hit the Alt key and do that and maybe rotate this. No, don't rotate it. I take that back. Let's hit the letter K. There we go. Now that seems a little bit too small. So let's go ahead and bring it up just a little bit, hit the letter K. Now that seems maybe too big. Let's bring this a little bit smaller. We'll just leave it like that. And now I'm going to apply it to the side as well. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and move this over there. And we're going to save our file. Okay. Now with these swatches, we can actually lower the opacity, and we should actually. So if we, the downside, here, let's go ahead and lower the opacity. Oh, maybe we can't. Change of plans. We don't lower the opacity. I mean, technically, we could create a shape. Oh, that's what we should do. That's what we should do. Sorry. Okay. I told you we were going to run into problems. So here's the problem. I actually think this is way too dark, right? The line work here. So if I lower the opacity, then the background starts to um, pop in, right? That's something I don't want. So what we need to do is create a shape that goes around the entire building. We'll give it a white fill color and we'll put it right above the background. This way we can lower the opacity here, but we have a white background behind this layer, but in front of the background layer. Hopefully that makes sense. But here, just notice that by lowering the opacity, which I want to do, it brings those background lines out, which I don't want. So let's bring this back up. I'm going to come over here to the layers. We're going to hit the plus sign, and I'm going to call this white backdrop. And I'm going to put this right above my background layer. I want to lock everything and then make sure I'm on the white backdrop layer. Okay. And then I will use the pen tool. And I'm going to trace around the entire perimeter of my project. And in doing that, that's going to create a bunch of pavers. I'll change the fill color to white when I'm done here. But this is essentially going to create a white backdrop so that when I make my, when I change the opacity, all I'm going to do is see through to this white backdrop. Okay. So bear with me here. Again, holding down the Alt key on the keyboard to zoom in and zoom out, and I'm going around the entire perimeter of my drawing. Including the poche. Not that I intend to make the poche opaque, but if you make a mistake, you could always hit Control Z to undo. I should have mentioned that at the very beginning. Um, let's go right there. Yeah, so it's Control Z to undo, it's Control Y to redo. All right, let's make sure we get that circle. And then I'll come over here to this fill, and I'm just going to change this to white. We'll hit OK, and I do not want any line work. Oops. Delete that. So I now have, if I turn my layers off, if I turn the swatches and the shadows and the poches, there's the shape that I just drew, right? So now when I bring in my line work and I change the opacity, I'm lowering the opacity of nothing because I have the line work locked. I'm lowering the opacity of my swatches. Come on, I should select it without seeing. Yeah, it's because I lowered. I'm a mess right now. Let's undo. Control Z. Okay. So this is a white backdrop. It's at 100 opacity. If I click on the line work and I select my line work and I change the opacity down, right? This is no longer, this is a lot lighter with the white backdrop behind it, which is still in front of the background. Okay, glad we solved that problem. So this is where we're at. The next thing I want to do is add the ground. Okay. So I'm going to create a layer for that. Going to hit ground. And let's go to our swatches. Now for the ground, we want to use something kind of abstract, something not really recognizable. Um, you know, something like this, right? Something that doesn't seem, something like, I mean, I could also use this right here. I could pretty much use any of these really. Um, but I'm going to use this one right here. So I'll click, drag, and bring it in over here. And let's go ahead and edit this because we have to turn that red. And let's go to the swatches. You know what? The swatches have stopped. Oh, it's because this is selected. Okay, I had to have the fill above. Now I get to double click on. Now it highlights it for me. So let's double click it. Let's control A so we select everything. And let's change this color to my color. We'll hit OK. Let's hope. Wait, what happened? Oh, I think this is exactly what I was talking about earlier. If I give it a color, shows it to me as a color, hit OK, it gives it to me as a gray. So this is exactly what I was talking about. So let's control A everything. I mentioned that we could come over here to our color guide, and just give it any color. I click out. Now I can see it has a color. So now let's go ahead and select everything and come back over here. And go ahead and do that. Okay, we'll hit done. And of course, we can't see right through it. We can see right through it. So let's go back. We have to add a white rectangle behind it. I'm going to change this to a white. Hit OK. I do not want a stroke. And then I'll go from one corner all the way to the other corner like that. Perfect. Hit the selection tool, and then let's come over here to the layers. And let's bring this down. Oh my God. Oh, that's a lot. Okay, so I'm going to click, drag. Unfortunately, there's no faster way of doing this. So I'm just going to click, drag, I'm holding down, and I'm just letting it scroll all the way down. This is definitely a part you're going to want to fast forward because this is going to take a minute. We're only halfway there. My finger's starting to get tired. I'm pressing down on the mouse. This is weird. Almost there. Remember that we can't get it to the last one, so we're going to move it right up above the last one. And then we'll grab the last one, we'll click, and we'll put it right above that. Okay. Ooh, that took a minute. All right, we'll hit done. There we go. So now what I'll do is, do we have ground? Okay. So now what I will do, this actually needs to go into the swatches layer, which is locked because it's technically a swatch. But under the ground, let's lock our line work and our white backdrop. I'm going to create a shape using the pen tool. Oh, I think I did want these. You know what? Let's really quickly change our, let's go to back. No, what am I looking for? Shadows. Unlock that. This one right here. Because I do want the line to go in through here. So if you ever want to edit any of the lines that you've already created, you actually select the arrow with the white arrow instead of the black arrow. The black arrow will select the object, the white one will select the actual line work, right? So now I have these points, and it's best if you just click on it once, it's going to move it, but if you click on it twice, then I can edit it, right? And so that's kind of what I want. That. Let's go back and do the same thing over here. I'm pressing down the control key and double click, bring this down, bring this down. I really don't care about this. It's going to be very difficult to see. Okay, so that part's fixed. Let's go ahead and lock it again. So where was I? The ground. I'm now going to, let's go from there. I'm just going to go all the way around my ground. And come across. And I'm actually just going to go all the way off the page. Just like that. And here I'm just going to kind of guess and then make sure it's closed. There we go. So now this actually isn't a live paint because we actually have an image or we actually have a shape. So what I'm going to do is select inside this white space, inside the shape that I created, and then use my eyedropper, which was this right here. And that's going to click. That's going to match these properties here. What happened? That's the whiteout. Okay. Told you we were going to have problems with that one. What happens? That's because we were below the shadows. But if we go above the shadows, that seems to have worked. Okay, perfect. All right, let's scale this. I actually want to, let's see what that looks like. So let's select this, hit the eyedropper again. There we go. Definitely want to lower the opacity on this. I actually want to rotate this. And let's see what that looks like. Nope, the other way around. Undo. I have to select this shape, hit the eyedropper. There we go. Wonder if it's still too big. I think it's still, the scale is still a little too big. So let's select this, hit the eyedropper. There we go. And then change the opacity. There we go. Okay, let's save the file. All right. And those are our swatches. One more. I want to add some sort of grass or something in here. I wonder if I could live paint this. No. Well, let's go to the line. I could create a shape. Let's just create the shape. Oh, I'm seeing these lines through. Crap. You know what? I need to do the white backdrop again. If let's turn off the ground. You know what? I wonder if I could just go into shadows, unlock this, select this, and then hit this selection tool. And what happens if I just double click and do that? And I just manipulate these. Oh, way down. Bring this out there. There we go. All right. Let's lock that. Let's bring the ground. Perfect. Okay. Let's go ahead and also in the ground layer, let's just go ahead and create another shape. Just like that. And we'll bring in one swatch. Let's look at our grasses. I'm going to do this one here. Click and drag. And this one, you know what? I don't have to add, oops. I don't have to add a backdrop. Okay, let's go ahead and edit. I don't have to add a backdrop because I already have the white backdrop there. So when I double click here, let's select everything and let's just change the lines. Perfect. We'll hit done. How's the scale though? We'll select this, hit the eyedropper. Yeah, see, it's a little bit too big. So let's select this, go something like that. Hit the eyedropper. There we go. Move that off to the side. Okay, now let's go ahead and save this. And now the next step is going to be, what are we doing next? Next step is going to be to add the furniture and really animate this space. Okay. This is actually where it's going to get really good. So let's go ahead and we're done with this. Let's create some layers. And we're going to create one layer that says furniture. And let's bring some furniture in. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the other file that was provided, which is the section silhouettes file. And I'm not going to add too much just because we'll be here forever. Um, so here's the silhouette file. I'm going to go ahead and let's bring in this guy here. So I'm going to click, drag. Let's place that right inside here. I'm going to hold down the shift key and scale this down. And when at this point, this is where it's going to get a bit tricky. Okay. Because we have to figure out how are we actually scaling this? What is this thing actually? Yeah, like what's the correct scale for something like this? Okay, so remember your floor heights. Whatever your height is, okay, That's what your height is at this point, from here to here where the section cut is. But remember that dimensions get smaller the farther back they go. Okay. So this might even be a little bit too big for my scale, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to select this and I'm going to double click over here in the fill. I'm going to add my color. There we have that. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and see what else we want to bring in. I want to bring in, well, let's bring these in right here. So I'm going to click, drag, and place this. Go ahead and bring these in over here. I'm going to put these right in the corner. This is actually too big. So I know that my floor heights here, I think were 10 feet. Um, is how high I did them. Here's where it gets tricky. If I scale this a little bit too big and I scale this a little bit too small, when I look at this section, something does not look right. Right now we can argue that this is probably a little bit farther back and this is a little bit closer based on the amount of space we have here. But the more stuff we add, the harder it's going to be to make sure that we have the correct scale. So as you begin to add more and more things, start zooming out and reference whatever it is you're scaling to the other objects. Okay. So in this case, I think these are going to have to get a little bit smaller. And I actually feel like this is going to have to get a little bit bigger. Okay, so now we have some people in here. Now I want to go ahead and add the windows. So I'm going to go back to my layers. Let's go ahead and create one layer. We're almost done here, by the way. We'll hit glass. We'll call this glass. Go ahead and lock everything. And I'm going to bring out my line work for glass and bring it all the way up to the top. I'm going to be in my glass layer and I'm going to lock it. Sorry, I'm going to trace it. So I am going to lock the glass layer though. Going to click right here and I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and start on one side. Let's go ahead and change this to the correct color. Hit OK. And I actually want the line work to be black on this one because I have black line work as well. So black is 60, 40, 40, 100. That's the true black. So now I'm going to go ahead and essentially just trace everything that is um, in the glass, right? And I'm making sure that every time I go around, I hit that circle. You see the circle? No, you don't see it. Right next to the cursor to make sure that it's a closed loop. Okay. You'll also notice that I'm starting from one side. Right, let's go ahead and close this off. Notice that I just closed this off and now I'm going to start over here. If I start here where I left off, or even if I start where there's one point there, or where I clicked, what that ends up doing is actually deleting that point. So if I click here, you'll notice that it deleted that piece. So let me undo. So that's why as long as you don't click, as long as you don't click in an area that you have selected, because right now it is selected, then it's not going to deselect that anchor point. So I'm going to click here. That's why I start on one side. I complete the shape. Get that circle to complete. And then I start on the opposite corner on the other side as well. Okay. So we have that. And now over here, go here. Now this piece of glass technically is part of the section. So I'm going to leave that part fully opaque. But over here, I'm going to create the shapes and then add a transparency to them. Close that off. This one's a bit tricky. We're going to go from here. There. All right. So there's the glass. Now I'll go ahead and select all of these pieces, holding down the Shift key. And let's change the opacity to, let's try 35. Do the same thing over here. Let's change this to 35. What does that look like? That's starting to look like glass. We want to make sure to get this one and this one. Change that to 35. But notice that I am not changing this one because that's part of the actual section cut. I will change this one and I will change this one to 35 as well. And now let's go to layers. Let's turn off the line work class. Let's go ahead and just bring it back down. And there we have it. There is but it looks like glass. Okay. Now the last thing I'm going to do is the foliage. So let's go ahead and bring this up here. I'm going to call this trees. And actually, I'm going to do clouds as well. So let's save the file. Let's come over here and let's pick a really good tree to put at the center. I'm going to pick this one. I like that one. And then I'm also going to add a couple trees. Let's hold down the shift key. This one, and this one. I'm going to click and drag and bring it in. Go ahead and bring these down. All right, so this is the one I'm going to put at the center. Let's change the color. So let's see, C333. Let OK. And oh, this isn't my clouds layer, so let's put it in the trees. I'm going to place this right here and scale this nice and big. Just like that. You know what I want to do? What if those lines are a bit thick? So let's change this to 0.75 lines. And what if we give it a fill? What does the fill look like? So CC333. I have an idea. Let's leave this. I'm going to hold down the Alt key. Can I right click? No. Okay, so I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just copy it over and then move it back on top of itself. And then this one, oh, I should put this on a separate layer. Let's call this trees 2. That one is not going to have a fill. Let's turn that one off. And this one I'm going to bring down quite a bit like that. Now turn this one on. There we go. There we go. So now if we want to make the fill darker, we can darken up the tree. Actually, I like it lighter. Okay. Now I'm going to, let's change all of these. I think I'm only going to do that to this one here, but let's change this. Let's go ahead and put this right back. We'll say it's behind. This one will also say it's behind here somewhere. I'm not sure how that's going to look actually. And this one, put down right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, these are all under the clouds layer. Let's first put them in the correct layer. Bring these down. Okay, and I'm going to just use the clipping plane. So remember, and here I'm just kind of eyeballing. We want to go around the area we want to keep. Okay, I'm going to take the fill off so that I could select the tree, hold down the shift key. Not sure if I did it, so let's right click and Make clipping mask. Oh no, that should have gone this way. I wonder if I hit this selection. Let's zoom in. If I double click here, I could do that. Let's edit it that way. There we go. Then let's double click outside. There we go. All right, let's try to get it right this time. Actually, what I'm going to do is lower the opacity so I can see right through it. All right, now let's go ahead and just draw around. Still can't see it, so I'm just gonna have to kind of guess. Oh, this is not turning out good. I lost the circle. There we go. Let's close it off. Let's go ahead and make that change the fill. And now let's hit the selection tool so we can get these grip points. And I'm going to double click here. And I'm not sure how I'm going to edit this one. There we go. Hopefully that does it. So let's hold down the, select the tree and that's the shape we created. Right click, being plane. There we go. Now let's go ahead and bring this back. Huh. I have to double click to select it. Now I could go ahead and change the opacity. Last thing, almost there. We're going to bring in the clouds. So let's go ahead and click. I'm going to make these nice and big. Put these on the clouds layer so that they go fall behind my trees. And yeah, you know what? I'm going to turn them off. Yeah, I can't see them. I'm going to create a shape. How am I going to do this? Let's turn off the trees. All right, that's a little bit better. So now I can go ahead and click, 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 click. This is the part that I'm not sure of, so I'm gonna have to kind of wing it here. Okay. And then turn off the fill there. Select this, right click, make clipping plane. Perfect, I think. And now let's turn on the trees. I kind of don't like the clouds, but you get the point. So there we have it. Let's go ahead and save the file. Ooh, that was quite a bit of work, but absolutely worth it. Um, with, if we spend a little bit more time, we could add more people, we could add more furniture, we could add more trees, we could fix this, fix the clouds. I'm not liking the clouds, but you can see how impressive this drawing is going to be and how great it's going to look in a portfolio and how great it's going to look on a presentation board, right? Um, Again, I'm sure just like you saw me go through some headaches or some kind of setbacks, you're going to go through your own set of setbacks as well. Just Google, just keep trying, just keep pushing through it, and you'll get to it. It's not that difficult. It's just very time consuming, as you can see, right? So just keep chipping away at it. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Not